Chapter 10. His name alone strikes fear. Reclining in an easy chair, his legs outstretched on a low table, Shiva, along with Sati, contemplated the Ujjain temple from their chamber balcony. Ganesh leaned against the doorway, while Karthik had balanced himself on the railing. Shiva had just related to his family his entire conversation with the Vasudevs, including the identity of their real enemy. The Nilkant looked up at the evening sky before turning towards Sati. "Say something." "What can I say?" asked Sati. "Lord Vrigu, Lord Ram be merciful." "He can't be all that powerful." Sati looked up at Shiva. "He is one of the Saptarishi Uttaradhikaris. His spiritual and scientific powers are legendary. But it is not the fear of his powers which has shaken me. It is the fact that a man of his strength of character has chosen to oppose us." "Why would you say that?" "He is singularly unselfish and a man of unimpeachable moral integrity." "And yet he sent 5 ships to eliminate us." "Yes, he must truly believe that the Somras is good and we are evil to try to stop its usage. If he is convinced of it, could it be possible that we are wrong?" Karthik was about to interject when Shiva raised his hand. "No," said Shiva. "I am sure the Somras is evil and it has to be stopped. There is no turning back." "But Lord Vrigu," said Sati. "Sati, why would a man of such immense moral character use the Daivyastras, which we all know has been banned by Lord Rudra himself?" Sati looked at Shiva silently. "Lord Vrigu's attachment to the Somras has made him do this," said Shiva. "He thinks he is doing it for the greater good, but in truth he has become attached to the Somras. It is attachment that makes people forget not only their moral duties, but even who they really are." Karthik finally spoke up. "Baba is right. And if this is what the Somras can do to a man of Lord Vrigu's stature, then it surely must be evil." Shiva nodded before turning back to Sati. "What we are doing is right. The Somras must be stopped." Sati didn't say anything. "We need to concentrate our minds on the impending war," said Shiva. "They admittedly have a leader of the caliber of Lord Vrigu, along with the armies of Meluha and Ayodhya. The odds are stacked against us. How do we remedy this?" "Divide their capabilities," said Karthik. "Go on." Karthik went into his bedchamber and returned with a map. "Baba, would you please—" As Shiva lifted his feet off the table, Karthik laid out the map and looked at Ganesh before speaking. "Dada and I agreed that their strength lies in the technological wizardry of Meluha coupled with the sheer numbers of Ayodhya. If we can divide that, it would even out the odds." "By ensuring that Meluha and Ayodhya joined hands and conspire to assassinate us at Panchavati, Lord Vrigu has played his cards well. When they realize that I am alive, they will be compelled to treat me as a common foe, and hence ally with each other. After all, an enemy's enemy is a friend." Karthik smiled. "I wasn't talking about breaking their alliance, Baba, but dividing their capabilities." Sati, who had been studying the map all this while, was struck by the obvious. "Magad." "Exactly," said Karthik as he tapped on the location of Magad. "The roads in Swadweep are either pathetic or non-existent. That is why the armies, especially the big ones, use rivers to mobilize. The Ayodhyan army will not come to Meluha's aid by cutting through dense forests. They will sail down the Sarayu in ships, then up the Ganga to the newly built pathway to Devagiri that Meluha has constructed. Shiva nodded. The Ayodhyan ships would have to pass Magad at the confluence of the Sarayu and Ganga river. If Magad blockades the river, the ships will not be able to pass through. We can hold back their massive army with only a small naval force from Magad. Right, said Kartik. A smiling Shiva patted Kartik on his shoulder. I'm impressed, my boy. Kartik smiled at his father. Sati looked at Shiva. We must first rally Prince Surapadman to our side. Bhagirath had told me it's the Magadhan prince who makes all the decision, and not his father King Mahendra. Shiva concurred before turning towards Ganesh. Ganesh remained silent. He seemed a little unsettled by this new development. That is a good idea, said Gopal. Shiva, Sati, Ganesh and Kartik were with Gopal at the Vishnu temple. It should be relatively easy to bring Magad to our side, continued Gopal. King Mahendra is old and indecisive, but his son Surapadman is a fearsome warrior and a brilliant tactician, and most importantly, he is a calculating and ambitious man. His ambition should make him smell the opportunities in the coming war, said Shiva. He can use it to bolster his position and declare independence from Ayodhya. Exactly, said Sati. Whatever may be the reason behind his choosing to back us, an alliance with him will help us win the war. Gopal suddenly noticed a pensive Ganesh. Lord Ganesh? Ganesh reacted with a start. Does something about this plan trouble you? Asked Gopal. Ganesh shook his head. Nothing that needs to be mentioned at this point of time, Panditji. Ganesh was worried that he had inadvertently ruined any likelihood of an alliance with Magad, for he had killed the elder Magadhan prince Agrasen. He had done so while trying to save an innocent mother and her son from Agrasen. He hoped Surapadman was not aware of his identity. Dada and I have discussed this, said Kartik, and we believe that we should not assume Magad will come to our side. We should also be prepared to conquer Magad if need be. Well, hopefully that situation will not arise, said Shiva, turning towards Ganesh. But yes, we should make contingent plans to defeat Magad. It could be one of our opening gambits in the war. Then I shall start making plans for a departure to Magad, said Gopal. Are you going to come with us, Panditji? Asked a surprised Shiva. That would reveal your allegiance openly. There was a time to remain hidden, my friend, said Gopal. But now we need to come out in the open, for the battle with evil is upon us. We have to pick our side openly. There are no bystanders in a holy war. Parvateshwar and Anandamayi rode their favourite steeds, whispering to each other. He had leaned a bit to his right, holding Anandamayi's hand. He had just told her that if it came to a war, he would have no choice but to fight on the side of Meluha. Anandamayi, in turn, had told Parvateshwar that she would have no choice but to oppose Meluha. Aren't you even going to ask me why? Asked Anandamayi. Parvateshwar shook his head. I don't need to. I know how you think. Anandamayi looked at her husband, her eyes moist. And I guess you know how I think, said Parvateshwar, for you didn't ask me either. Anandamayi smiled sadly at Parvateshwar, squeezing his hand. What do we do now? Asked Parvateshwar. Anandamayi took a deep breath. Keep riding together. Parvateshwar stared at his wife. Till our paths allow us. Shiva leaned against the balustrade of the ship as it sailed gently down the Chambal. Beyond the banks he could see dense forests. There was no sign of human habitation for miles in any direction. He looked back at the 5 ships following them, a small part of the 50-ship Vasudev fleet. It had taken the Vasudevs a mere 2 months to mobilize for departure. What are you thinking, my friend? Asked Gopal. Shiva turned to the chief Vasudev. I was thinking that the primary source of evil is human greed. It is our greed to extract more and more from good that turns it into evil. Wouldn't it be better if this was controlled at the source itself? Can we really expect humans to not be greedy? How many of us would be willing to control our desire to live for 200 years? The dominance of the Somras over many thousands of years has admittedly done both good and evil, but it will soon perish for all practical purposes. Isn't it fair to say that it has served no purpose in the larger scheme of things? Perhaps it would have been better had the Somras not been invented. Why embark on a journey when you know that the destination takes you back to exactly where you began? Are there any journeys which do not take you back to where you began? Shiva frowned. Of course there are. Gopal shook his head. If you aren't back to where you began, all it means is that the journey isn't over. Maybe it will take 1 lifetime, maybe many, but you will end your journey exactly where you began. That is the nature of life. Even the universe will end its journey exactly where it began, in an infinitesimal black hole of absolute death. And on the other side of the death, life will begin once again in a massive Big Bang. And so it will continue in a never-ending cycle. So what's the point of it all? But that is the biggest folly, great Neelkant, to think that we are on this path in order to get somewhere. Aren't we? No. The purpose is not the destination but the journey itself. Only those who understand this simple truth can experience true happiness. So are you saying that the destination, even purpose, does not matter? That the Somras had to just experience all this, to create so much good for millennia, and then to descend into creating evil in equal measure, and then to have a Neelkant rise who would end its journey? If one believes this, then in the larger scheme of things, the Somras has achieved nothing. Let me try to put in another word. I am sure you are aware of how it rains in India, right? Of course I am. One of your scientists had explained it to me. I believe the sun heats the water of the sea, making it rise in the form of gas. Large masses of this water vapor coalesce into clouds, which are there blown over land by monsoon winds. These clouds rise when they hit the mountains, thus precipitating as rain. Perfect. But you have only covered half the journey. What happens after the water has rained upon us? Shiva's knowing smile suggested that he was beginning to follow. Gopal continued. The water finds its way into streams and then rivers, and finally the river flows back into the sea. Some of the water that comes as rain is used by humans, animals, plants, anything that needs to stay alive. But ultimately, even the water used by us escapes into the rivers and then back into the sea. The journey always ends exactly where it began. Now, can we say that the journey of the water serves no purpose? What would happen to us if the sea felt that there is no point to this journey since it ends exactly where it begins? We would all die. Exactly. Now one may be tempted to think that this journey of water results in only good, right? Whereas the Somras has caused both good and evil. But of course, Shiva smiled wryly. You would disabuse me of any such notion. Gopal's smile was equally dry. What about the floods caused by rains? What about the spread of disease that comes with the rains? If we were to ask those who have suffered from floods and disease, they may hold that rain is evil. Excessive rains are evil, corrected Shiva. Gopal smiled and conceded. True. So the journey of water from the sea back into the sea serves a purpose, as it makes the journey of life possible on land. Similarly, the journey of the Somras served a purpose for many, including you. For your purpose is to end the journey of the Somras. What would you do if the Somras hadn't existed? I can think of so many things. Lazing around with Sati, for example, or whiling away my time immersed in dance or music. That would be a great life. Gopal laughed softly. But seriously, hasn't the Somras given purpose to your life? Shiva smiled. Yes, it has. And your journey has given purpose to my life. For what is the point of being a chief Vasudev if I can't help the next Mahadev? Shiva smiled and patted Gopal on his back. Rather than the destination, it is the journey that lends meaning to our lives, great Nilkant. Being faithful to our path will lead to consequences, both good as well as evil, for that is the way of the universe. For instance, my journey may have a positive effect on the future of India, but it will certainly be negative for those who are addicted to the Somras. Perhaps that is my purpose. Exactly. Lord Vasudev had held we should be under no illusion that we are in control of our own breathing. We should realize the simple truth that we are being breathed. We are being kept alive because our journey serves a purpose. When our purpose is served, our breathing will stop, and the universe will change our form to something else, so that we may serve another purpose. Shiva smiled.